So today we're going to tackle a really powerful idea, one that just might have the potential to change the world: social innovation. Now, it's a term you've probably heard thrown around, but what does it actually mean? Let's dive in and demystify it.
I mean, let's face it, we are surrounded by massive, complex problems, right? From climate change to social inequality, they can feel overwhelming. So the big question on everyone's mind is, how do we even begin to fix them? Where are the real solutions going to come from? Well, a lot of people believe the answer lies in this idea of social innovation. It's an approach that's geared specifically towards these huge challenges. But here's the catch, the interesting part. There isn't one single universally agreed upon definition for it.
Now, you might think that's a problem, right? But it's actually one of its greatest strengths. Because there isn't some rigid definition, it allows people from totally different worlds, sociology, economics, business, to all come to the table, bringing their unique perspectives to solve a shared problem. It's a feature, not a bug.
Okay, so to really get a handle on what social innovation is, let's start by comparing it to something we all know really well: traditional, profit-driven business innovation. This is where the core difference just snaps into focus.
And here you can really see the split. Traditional innovation, it's all about profit. The main goal is to make money by finding an opportunity in the market. But social innovation, it starts from a completely different place. Its driver isn't a market gap, it's an unmet human need. Its goal isn't wealth, it's social welfare. It's all about the starting motivation, you see. That's the key.
So, let's dig a little deeper into that idea of unmet human needs. This is really the engine of social innovation. And if you can understand this part, you'll see why this whole approach is so different and, frankly, so powerful. So some researchers say we shouldn't just think about needs, but about satisfiers. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, our fundamental human needs, things like shelter or community, they're pretty much universal. But a satisfier is how we meet that need. And that can look wildly different depending on where you live, when you live, and what your culture is like. Social innovation is all about creating new and better ways to satisfy those fundamental needs.
And the scope here is absolutely huge. We're not just talking about material things like housing or jobs. Social innovation also goes after our intangible needs, like our need for culture or self-expression. It covers our collective need for a healthy environment, and even our political needs, like having citizenship rights. It really covers the whole spectrum of what it means to be human.
Now you might be thinking, this is a pretty strict choice. Either you're building a business for profit or you're building an organization for people. But here's the revelation. It's not that black and white. The two can, and very often do, coexist.
In fact, a lot of experts see it less like a hard wall between the two and more like a spectrum, where organizations can actually blend the goals of making a profit and having a social purpose. Let me show you how that spectrum breaks down.
This table lays it out beautifully. See, on one end, you've got pure business innovation. Profit is king. That's it. On the other end, pure social innovation, where meeting a need is the only thing that matters. But right there in the middle, you have this really fascinating category called bifocal innovation. These are ventures that, they still want to make a profit, but they are designed from day one to also create positive social value. And a huge part of this space today is what's called socio-tech innovation. This is where technology is used specifically to solve a social or environmental problem. Think of an app like Be My Eyes, which connects visually impaired people with sighted volunteers through a video call. The tech itself isn't revolutionary, but how it's applied is purely for social good. See, the technology is just the tool, not the end goal itself. Okay, so we've got the concepts down, we've defined the terms, but so what? Why is this conversation so incredibly urgent right now? What's the real-world impact of all this?
Well, here's the thing. Social innovation is so crucial because it steps in where traditional systems often fall short. Governments and public policies, they just can't solve everything, especially when they're facing huge financial pressures or an economic crisis. Social innovation emerges to fill those critical gaps with new, creative solutions.
And the challenges it's taking on are, well, they're the biggest ones we face. Climate change, poverty, social exclusion. These aren't problems a single company or one new law can fix by itself. They demand a totally different kind of approach, one that's collaborative, that's based in the community, and that focuses on long-term systemic change instead of just short-term profit. And that, right there, is the unique power of social innovation. So at the end of the day, whether we're talking about a nonprofit, one of those bifocal companies, or a socio-tech startup, the ultimate goal is always the same.
It's about something much bigger than just a new product or a service. The real aim is transformative social change and a real, tangible improvement in human well-being.
So I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. In a world that is so often driven by the bottom line, what happens when we shift our focus? What if the most powerful, the most world-changing innovations don't come from chasing wealth, but from a deep, genuine commitment to meeting human needs?